Hello everyone, and we are back. What is going on everyone? Hope you all are doing well out there. And today's video is going to be about how this whole balding journey made me more of a nice guy and how I actually got out of it. And at the end of this video, if you are experiencing male pattern hair loss, especially as an Asian in their 20s, then you might just find something valuable to take away from this whole experience. So with that out of the way, let's jump right into today's video. First, before we start, we need to talk a bit about what a nice guy actually means. And this is something that's been defined over and over again all over the internet. But for the purposes of this video, we're going to be taking the definition of a nice guy to mean someone who operates under covert contracts, is guided by approval seeking in terms of his behaviors, and generally just wants to be liked. And actually, to be fair, these are needs that everyone, nice guy or not, will have. But the core part of it is this whole idea of covert contracts, or trying to bend oneself to fit into a particular mold or to gain someone else's approval. Now that we have defined the nice guy, let's talk a bit about how I think this balding journey, or rather male hair loss journey, has in fact turned me into more of a nice guy, and more importantly, how I'm getting out of it and how you may as well, especially if you're experiencing similar things. Now, first of all, you might ask, why am I linking the concept of A, being a nice guy, and B, male pattern hair loss, which is mostly a genetic trait? Why am I linking these two together? Well, one common thing to experience when losing your hair is the fear of not being liked, or fear that you won't be accepted by your social group. And it turns out these two fears permeate everything else, especially when it comes to your decisions in life. If you are familiar with the definition of the nice guy, as we talked about a bit earlier, a lot of these qualifying behaviors, or trying to seek approval from other people, manifest itself in behaviors that cover up parts of ourselves or filter parts of ourselves out. That's because we view those traits about ourselves as potentially undesirable, and therefore we try to hide them away from the rest of the world. And in the context of male pattern hair loss, especially in Asia, where balding is seen as something that is a negative, then the behavior of covering up could include things like, wearing a hat, wearing a beanie all the time. If you're in a hot Southeast Asian country like here in Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and the like, then that may include using things like hair fibers such as Toppik. Anyway, all of this is to do with covering up. And after a while, you just develop this kind of sense of shame, really, that you are having to cover all of this up. Perhaps if you're riding down an escalator and you are just conscious that the person behind you, especially if you know them, might notice that your hair is thin on top, and you might wonder to yourself, whether people would still approve of you, or whether you will still be chosen, as is going to be the case in dating. But that being said though, same goes for nice guy behaviors. Bending your behaviors to suit the will or perceived approval of someone else, even though they may not actually see your real self as undesirable. All of these behaviors, such as covering up, such as filtering yourself, actually started to rub off on me in other ways. That included behaviors such as, taking up less space, because deep down, I believe that these physical shortcomings meant that I was not desirable enough, or at a certain level to qualify for someone else's attention. But now I understand that all of these are really just self-preservation mechanisms. You're just responding to the two fears that we discussed earlier. The effects of doing all of this is that you become less polarizing and basically more like the same as everyone else. So you lose that edge that actually sets you apart from everyone else. And what I realized is that that edge that you are trying to filter away tends to be the thing that people who you are meant to be around with or resonate with actually are drawn towards. And that actually nicely brings me on to the second point, which is that generating polarity is actually better than trying to gain the approval of everyone. Now, approval-seeking behavior tends to repel people and meaningful connections in general. Now, in Singapore, we have this term called wayang, which is derived from a traditional puppet show, if I'm not mistaken. But the meaning behind this is that you're trying to act to get your superior's approval, and that is similar to what you're doing when you are playing out all these nice guy or covering up behaviors. You're just trying to act to be someone you are not. And that's one thing that I found myself doing quite a lot during this whole hair loss journey, simply because all this covering up, all this hiding away, and all this shame actually rubbed off in other areas. But what I realized is that if 90% of people are doing the same thing, coming across the same and just seeking approval, because trust me, this is more common than you might expect, then you've probably heard the phrase that people don't actually like someone safe, they want someone who's present and who is authentic. And in the case of my hair loss itself, as well as all the perceived shame around the hair thinning at the top, especially when I was going out on things like dates, and Toppik was really just the surface level thing. The fact that I've lived with this whole hair loss issue for quite a long time meant that my entire energy, if you believe that kind of thing, was broadcasting this fear and shame, even though the Toppik might have done its job. So in terms of how I am actually breaking out of this, buzzing the hair was one way to go about it. The other thing that I've been doing to break out of this pattern was to try Muay Thai. And what I realized about Muay Thai that was really beneficial to this is that it puts you in face-to-face confrontation with someone else and tension. You're all up in their personal space, especially when you're practicing various drills. Going through all of this over time, you realize that you can do all of this, take up space, practice your drills and sparring, and be okay. This was actually before I got the buzz cut. And when I first went for this whole buzzed look, I felt that a weight had been kind of lifted. Something changed and I stopped hiding away from everyone. And funnily enough, after a week or two, the whole thinking and being conscious about how your hair may look or how people may perceive you actually went away. As I mentioned in my other videos, there was just so much less mental load. Now, how this would affect me at work or in terms of my social life remains to be seen. But I do see clear next steps, which are to be less apologetic in making my intent known, being comfortable with sitting in the tension and staying authentic to my own needs, whether this is in work or in my social life. I'd say that during my hair loss journey, when I was applying Toppik on a daily basis, it was all about trying to fit in. Whereas this whole buzz cut era is really about accepting what I was born with and possibly standing out even if it's alone sometimes. And at this point in the video, I have just one question for all of you out there. What are you using as your version of Toppik? Leave your comments down below. That is all from me for now. Hopefully you found this video of value, and if you did, do make sure to leave a like and subscribe to this channel. With all that being said, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.